Right now, it is time to bring in our friend Brian Ross and Real News. Brian joins us on a Thursday morning, and we take a look at the stories that are bouncing about on the wires and in the newspapers and on the radio and TV. And Brian, I sit here this morning at 23 minutes after 7 o'clock on this December 2nd, and never ever imagining over the years that I've been growing up that Roe versus Wade would be in serious trouble.
Indeed, it is, based on reading from the questioning yesterday of the justices. I don't know if you had a chance to listen to it. I was driving out on an assignment in the Midwest and listened to most of the live stream of the Supreme Court, and it was fascinating to hear that it looks like the justices are prepared. They challenged this issue of viability as to when there's an actual human being. A lot of philosophical discussions there. And the big question, of course, Miles, is they are going to, if they overturn Roe, which they seem likely to do, according to accounts that we've been reading, the ability to sort of set aside a long-established precedent on which millions of women have relied on is really something stunning and historic, and for many very disturbing.
Well, I'll have to see what happens, but it is one of those things that it's kind of like when the Berlin Wall came down, things like that. It's just it's a staggering event, and it'll play out in the next couple of weeks when they finally announce their decision.
It may not be until June. It may not be until June. Actually, the biggest cases sometimes take a while to resolve.
Yeah.
But it seems early on it's a 6-3 split.
It's and even John Roberts is trying to come up with like a plan that keeps Roe versus Wade in place, but it seriously affects the way it produces. But I don't think he's got any chance getting that past the other conservatives. I just don't. I don't think he would even come close to getting the votes.
And it does have serious political implications, because if the court, in fact, overturns it, it doesn't mean that each state can't pass its own laws, which is likely what would happen based on the questioning there. And that could lead to a political upheaval, much as gun laws have activated those on the right. This abortion issue could well activate those on the left.
All right, we'll move on to the other issue that really plagues America, and that is shootings, school shootings especially. And this one, with the latest thing, school officials actually met with the student who did the shooting and his parents before the shooting took place.
Right, and the father bought a gun on Black Friday, and what I'm hearing, it appears that the prosecutors are likely to charge the parents with a crime of some sort as well.
It's just.
The question is, what do parents do in that situation? I think it's something that all of our listeners want to think about. Are the parents responsible for the bad behavior of disturbed teenagers?
It's just one of the additional things that we face here in the United States that I think other countries looking at us, looking at this Roe versus Wade decision, looking at what happened on January 6th, looking at the shootings that we go through, other countries must look at us really like we're from a different planet.
It is uniquely American, this rash of gun violence. That, of course, is tied. In fact, the more guns, the more gun violence is going to be. And it's ingrained in our Constitution. The court there, again, has ruled that the guns are not just part of a well-regulated militia, but extend to individuals. Individuals have rights, not just as part of a militia. And that's, again, the impact of a Supreme Court ruling and the politics of putting somebody on the court. It raises the question also, Marshall, if you heard the live stream yesterday, some of the most interesting and important parts of the discussion came from two of the justices who were likely to vote to keep Roe, and that would be Sotomayor and then Stephen Breyer at age 82. A lot of pressure on him to retire at the end of this term, which would be next June, for fear that at some point the Democrats would not have the ability to nominate who they want, and yet an even more conservative justice would end up in the court in a Republican-controlled Senate.
All right. I want to move on to the once again the never-ending topic of COVID. The latest new version of COVID And there's so many different versions of COVID out there, so many different stories out there. It's a wonder that the public is confused and a little dazed and don't know who to believe now.
It's hard. You don't even know how to pronounce it, really. Omicron.
Yeah.
What do you say?
I say Omicron, but who knows?
And so we don't know. We know it spreads much more easily. We don't know once you get that whether the symptoms, the reports early are that it's mild, but that's not really clear. It'll take a couple more weeks. And this just goes to the nature of this virus, which mutates and changes. And to me, it underscores and highlights the folly of those in political life who continue to fight vaccine mandates, mask mandates. That's what keeps us safe. And other countries are doing, much more sort of aggressive mandates along this line. In Canada, you cannot board a train or a plane without proof of vaccination. I was on a flight yesterday in from Detroit, and who knows who's on that flight? Everyone wore a mask, but you don't know on that flight who has or hasn't been vaccinated. And I, for one, would support a measure that would require vaccinations in a public transport situation. You're in that metal tube for a couple hours, with close to people. I think it's only the people who are vaccinated, myself.
To be honest with you, I never enjoyed sitting in that metal tube because it never made sense to me to breathe recycled air from 100 and some odd people all sitting together. So that was always part of it. And it's not a question of being afraid to fly. I used to have a pilot's license. I used to fly a small plane. But it was just sitting with so many other people so close with recycled air for an hour or two never made much sense to me. I want to go back to the removal of our forces from Afghanistan and tell you why the move by Joe Biden, even though the move itself was done sloppily, how important it was that it was done. The ex-Afghan president, Hamid Karzai, he calls on the international community to help the Taliban because the Taliban are his brothers. I mean, there was just absolutely zero future. There was zero future in our staying in Afghanistan. Zero.
Absolutely zero. And you certainly can look back and maybe it wasn't done as well as it could have been. Certainly it wasn't done as well as it could have been. But the decision to do it was absolutely right on. And it's amazing it took so many presidents to get to that point. Neither Obama nor Trump found a way to do it. They believed the generals. And, I think you have to admire President Joe Biden. He had his views, he heard the generals, and he went ahead with it anyway. As you say, we're right to be out of there.
All right. Well, that's a look at that. But we've got some nice news. We've got, of course, coming up this weekend, a lot of celebrations for the holiday season. We've got the menorah lit on the green in Sharon. We're going to have the tree lighting ceremony on Saturday. And the Hotchkiss Library is bringing back Santa Claus coming with an outdoor event. I think that's coming up on Sunday. So there's a lot for us to be thankful for.
Indeed it is, and it looks like the town green in Sharon will be all lit up this weekend, and it's just great to see that, and it'd be great to be out there. I hope you'll be coming, Marshall.
I'm going to give it a shot, and because I'll tell you what, there's going to be 1,200 luminaries that are going to be circling the green. And that last year was an amazing sight along with the tree, so we hope as many people turn out and get over all this bad news and enjoy some of the fine things that we have in small-town America.
And as a reminder, hats off to all those people who, do things voluntarily for our community, from the library to the fire department and a whole host of other places. Hats off to them, and a big thank you to all of them to making our holidays just a little bit brighter.
All right, Brian, we'll check with you next week.
You bet, Marshall.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Brian Ross and Real News here on The Breakfast Club on Robin Hood Radio. And you can hear the whole catalog of shows that we've done at robinhoodradio.com. Click on demand, click on Real News with Brian Ross.